Good morning, everyone, to our next seminar, this time about our API. I'm Peter Schmidt. Some of you know me already. I'm part of the custom success team of AX Semantics, and I'm going to tell you today how you can integrate us into your systems with our API connectivity. What we will do today, we will talk about what benefits you get with our API. So how should you use or why should you use our API? The next point will be how do you use our API? What are the basic elements of it? And how can you access them? And in a third part, we are done with the theory, and I will implement a round trip of uploading data and downloading a text step by step in Python. So we'll actually code today. So let's just start. Why should you use the API? Most of us know the following problems. We have to export data out of our PIMs all the time, have to manually modify it, for example, to make them able to be uploaded to our systems. Then we have to upload them. We have to push files around. Nobody knows what version of the file is correct. When we made the texts, we have to download the texts as files again, match them up again to the products in our PIM so that they are and in the right spot, and that's just annoying to do by hand every time you have a new set of products. So our API can solve that pain. It can give you true integration to your own systems. You can deliver data to us over the API. You can trigger the text generation of a single text or several texts at once via the API and get the text back in two different techniques from the API. So after you configured the training with us, after you configured the texts, you actually wouldn't have to go to our cockpit anymore. So you could just seamlessly use our systems in yours. The API, we have also endpoints in the API to get some reporting. For example, you can request the number of texts you produced with us and some statistical information about the text itself. It's in the data set of the text, and about your collections. With this, you can achieve true text automation. That means after you implemented the access with the API into your systems, you wouldn't even need to come to our system or to our web page to create text or get something from it. The only point where you have to go to the cockpit would be to change how your texts are made. To change the text training, which means it can be as easy as pushing a button in your PIM to get a text from us. That's nice, I think. What can our API do for you, or what specific tasks does it offer you? It has a full authentication system, so that only you can use your accounts, and nobody can create texts and bill you. So nobody other than you can use your account to create texts. You can work on documents. You can create new documents and upload data to them. So that's what you would do usually in a JSON or XML file that you would import into our collections in the cockpit. You can do via the API. That's something I'm gonna show you later as code. You can initiate the text generation for one document. So it's like clicking the button generate text in our results, and you can pick up the document with the text in there, which would be like exporting a single text from the results. The same can be done on collections. You can get all documents of a collection, which means you can download all texts at once. The important thing, or the one of the benefits above doing it with a file export here, is when you created texts, our file export in the cockpit is generated about once an hour, but the text you can download from the API, they are live, which means the instant the text is generated, you can download it via the API and can work a lot quicker via the API than you can do without and with the files. Also, on the collections, you can trigger to recreate the texts of a complete collection at once, which means when you need to redo all of the texts you have published, you just send one command to us, and all of your texts in the collection will be generated again, so that you can pick them up. And we have a very quick so-called direct generation API endpoint, which means you send us a data set, and in the response to that call that your machine sends to us, the generated text will be directly answered. For that we have to keep a special infrastructure in place. That's why that's a premium paid service. It's in our broadcasting license, but that's technically possible. So you can, for example, react to user input on your website and give your user a specifically generated text in an instant. Okay. The usual way our machine talks to yours for delivering text would be a webhook. You would offer a webhook address where our machine can send the text to you. And so you wouldn't need to poll all the time for the finished texts that you have created with us. That's pretty much all the functionality you see in the results tab of our cockpit. So you can get rid of the results completely and just do it all in your own systems, just as you like. How do we use the API with AX Semantics? I'm going to talk about a usual round trip that the most of our customers do today. So this would be the standard case. First, you have to authenticate with our systems, as I said earlier, so that our systems know that it's really you and that you are entitled to generate text or to upload data or whatever you want to do. Then you upload data to our systems. It's just like the file import. You trigger the content generation. You could do that automatically, so this step is optional. And after the texts are generated, you would download them. And that's one full circle from hi, I'm there, giving data, generate a text for me, and give me the text. That's one round trip, how we call it. On what elements can our API, or for what elements gives our API access to you? First, the collections. The collections, you may know, are are a collection of single documents. This collection has a unique ID, which means it has an address we can we can access, and we need this address in API calls so that we only work on a specific collection and not on any collection you have access to. And the most important point, each collection with its data sets is associated with one specific project. So if you upload, for example, garden chairs, you won't find that collection in your neighbor project where you talk about sausages. Okay, they are this association is strict. And in a collection, you find one or more documents. A document is the organizational piece where you store the data set for a text. It contains the product data or the data that should be used in the text as JSON. And when you created the text, it also contains the generated text in several output forms, output formats. The document also has a unique ID. The ID of a document is different from the ID of a collection. Also, the document ID we need to we use the document ID to access the document when we want to make a call from the API to that document and do anything with it. And the document has a name, which means when you have the garden chair Flora, you can name the document garden chair Flora, so that when you go into the cockpit and see the list of all your documents, you see familiar names and not just cryptic numbers. Now, what are the basic operations of APIs? And I don't mean just our API, but any API that you will find on the internet. It's three operations. The first and I think most important one is the get operation. The get operation, as the name says, instructs the server you are calling to give you something. For example, in our system, it's you could download document details, which includes the text. You could get a list of all documents in a collection. That's the get command, and you can get the reports every time you want to get something from the server. You have to send it a get command. You can imagine that as a web browser, like your Firefox or Chrome, that will send a get command to Google and says, "Hey, get me the Google homepage," and then the server delivers in its answer the white page with the search field and the buttons and all that stuff and the pictures. Nothing is saved on the server, and therefore we only need that get command. In the other direction, when we want to save something or create an act or trigger an action on the web server that does any saving, it should be a post command. A post command means I am sending something, a payload, to the server, and that server should do something with it, maybe save it, or calculate something out of it and save that. And every time a command should leave a trace on the server, it should be a post command. In our case, that would be uploading and adding documents, because we have to store the documents, we have to upload the data into the document. Trigger the text generation is also a post command, because a new text is generated and that will be stored. And the creating a new collection where we put all that stuff is also a post command, because yeah, we are creating stuff, the server has to memorize it. That's what we do with post. The third command, first we have to know a post is there for creating something new, something we have never seen yet. And it has a safeguard. When we are trying to post something that is already there, we get an error message. In our systems, for example, if we are trying to upload a document with an ID that's already in our systems, our systems will deny the upload because it says, "Hey, we have already seen that. Please choose a new ID so that we don't have a double in our data systems." But if we want to update that existing element, we have to use the patch command. I'll show later how we put that in our API access. It's pretty obvious once you see the code line where you put it. In our systems, you can update existing elements. For example, you could upload new data sets. You can upload a collection. You can add new data into a collection. Yeah. So these are the three basic commands APIs support, and that's like this in the whole internet. These three are pretty much the basics of APIs anywhere. now I'm going to start implementing it, and I'm going to I want to show you one complete round trip as I told you. I want to show you the authentication, how you authenticate in the API with us, how you can upload data. I want to trigger a text generation with you, and I want to download one text from our API so that you see it. I will use our documentation where all the steps that we are going to do today are prepared for you. You can even pretty much copy and paste the code from there. And I'm going to do that today too, just to show you how easy it can be to integrate our systems to yours. What I don't get into today is the preparation of the data sets, because that's more up to you. And I think when you created a project, that should be already done when you start creating a training with us. So let's remember what we want to do. First, we need to authenticate. Like say our API, hey, it's me, Peter, I may create text. And where do we find it? Let's first look into the documentation. You see, it's a post command because we want to get something, but I'll come to that. Our authentication system works like this. In the platform, when you go to the cockpit, you find a code that's specifically just for you. You find that under your own symbol at the top. Then click on API access. And in here, you will find a pretty long string. And that's your refresh token. This is pretty much the key for you to open our API for you. And how we continue would be, we send this token to our API, and our API will answer with a modified token that is valid for 1 hour. And with that 1 hour token, you can do the actual operations you want to do on our systems. You see here in the documentation, you see everything you need for the API call. I'll go through that when we get to the code. But how do we get that code? You can go on try it out in here and copy this long string, the refresh token, in here. Okay. And then down below here, there's a code generation area. And in here, you can actually get working example code for an API call to our systems. I'll copy that in a text editor so I can run it on my computer and talk about what we are actually seeing here. First, I'm doing the API calls in Python because that's a pretty much widely used language, and it's pretty clear to show what an API call consists of and how we do it. First, we have the URL. This is a very important part of an API call because it's actually the command that we want to execute on our API. You see, the URL for this call is api.axsemantics.com. That's us. Then a version number. This is for the token exchange. It's v1, the version 1. That will change in a few minutes in the other calls. And the command would be token exchange. This tells our server, hey, this person wants to get his expiring token, his refresh token, and will trigger the right operation on our side when we call that URL. You see, this URL is pretty much formatted as you would do in the normal browser, and that's that's actually how APIs work. We send a command to an address in the internet. We could actually open this site in the browser, but we wouldn't see anything useful for us. Only the machines can talk to each other there. Then we have a payload, which we will send along, which we will send to this address. And you see it consists of the refresh token as a key. It's a JSON structure. And as the value, it's the long part from the cockpit. This is my permanent token that you saw from in the cockpit. And we have headers. These headers tell the machine, hey, what you're receiving is JSON, so that the receiving end, like our systems, so that they understand what we are sending. Now this data is combined to a request. The request is the command post. As I told you before, when we do a post, we want something to happen in the server that is permanent, that saves something. We will send that command to the URL, this URL, to Token Exchange. And along with our post command, we will send the payload, this blob, and the headers. Yeah? And our API will send a response. In that response, we will find the non-permanent token, the token that is expiring, and we will print that so we can see it and continue to use it later because we need that to authenticate in the next steps. So let's save this and just run it. I'll run it with Python. And you see, I got an answer. Copy it to the text editor so we can read it better. Okay, in our answer, it's also JSON. We got one data field token type. It's JWT. That's the kind of token we received. We have an expiry date. This is the seconds, milliseconds actually. When this expires, it's an hour, and we have a token that will expire, but we can use this token for 1 hour to create to work on the API. Okay. The next step. So this was the authentication. There's nothing more to it. We need this token, and then we can do the next steps. What will be the next step? We want to upload data. We can create a project that I have already done. It is called API webinar. I already have 2 collections in there from my last webinar, but now I want to create an English one. And I can do that in the API documentation. You find the collections and their commands, what they can do. And in here, I have a command, create a new collection. Now I can use this command to create a new collection where I can put my data. What do I need for issuing that command? The collection needs a name and a language. The language determines what output the text will be in. And we need to give the training ID, which is not optional. It is the ID of the training I want to put this collection into. You see, these collections are only visible in this project, and we need this ID of the training to create a new collection in here. But I will fill that out. I'll fill that out step by step. And I need the license holder which is not necessary because I will give my expiring token with the call, and I will then identify with that. Okay. Let's fill it out in here. I will fill it out with my collection in English. The language of the collection should be English US. Training ID is this. And the license holder is, I can do it, is Auto855. Okay. And the URL where we will send that is api@axsemantics.com v2 collections. Let's do that with the code, our documentation created for that. Like this. Okay. In the headers, here I have to place the token I got last time. It's this one. Okay, just add it here. And two things will happen now when I run this. First, I will get an answer in here what happened on our systems, and here there will appear a new collection. Here it is. I just created a new collection in English, and I got an answer with information about that collection. Let's look into it. The collection tells me when it was created, when it was modified, its ID. That's important because because later I have to access it when I want to upload data, because I want to tell our machine in which collection the data should end up. And it tells me that I am the license owner. It tells me the language, and all that stuff is in here. What training it belongs to, all of it. You can save that. For example, if you want to add data right after it, you have to save at least the ID so that you can find the right collection again to put data in. Speaking of which, now we will put in a document in our new collection. Right now, you see it's empty, but now we want to add something. Also, in our documentation, we go to the API reference documents, and we want to add a document. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is look in here what action you want to perform, and just look up what information you need to do the action. In here, again, you have to provide the authorization token, as we talked about. You have to give the collection ID so that the document ends up in the right collection. And you have to give a UID, or you can give a UID. That should be your SKU or something, something you can identify in your system. You could give a name and the data set itself. This should actually be one level, but the data substructure can be encapsulated. I'll just fill it out again. The collection ID is this. The answer in the answer of the collection creation, we have the collection ID, and we can use it again in the next call. Headers authorization, that's just as we did it before. Have to copy this big string, put it here, and now this is the request body, and here we can fill out the stuff we want our data set to have. For example, the UID. Let's just call it 1, but the name I can call my data set, and you will see what that does later. My data set. And in here, I can write the data that I want to have. For example, A has the data field B and C. I'll just do put in dummy fields, D and E. And again, I will get code in our documentation. And put it in my editor so I can run it. Let's talk about how this looks in here. Again, we have a URL at first, but you see it's a different one than from the authentication. First, it changes. It's the second version of our data upload API, so this is version 2. It works on a collection, so it has the collections here. Which one? It's the UID in here. In our documentation, it's this collection ID part. It has to be replaced to the actual number. And then the next part of the command is work on a document. And we do a post again. So we are uploading something to save. But what will we upload? The payload, which this time is a data set as JSON, but an escape JSON. You see it has to be a string from here to here. And every quotation mark has to be escaped so that it's valid code, but this is just code. And when I run it, I will create a document which we can use for text generation. Let me show you. You see there's nothing there yet. Let's call the script. Let's call our API. And you see a document was created with the name my dataset, with the UID 1, and the data is uploaded in this fashion. We have the data field names A, UID, and name in the top level, just as I filled it out here. And B, D, C, E. In here, you may notice the order is moved around, but that's no problem because JSON has no order. Yeah, so we uploaded a data set, and from that we can create a text now. I have to prepare a sentence in here. Let's analyze it in English only. Okay, you see A has nested objects. It's A, B. And I want to make it available, write something about it. Okay, English. I have to create a new variant for the English. Okay, the data was D. Okay, now in the results, you see we didn't create a text yet in here, and we can also do that with our API. How do we do that? In here, we have the operation generate content for a single document, and it does what it says. You see, you have to navigate to the document, and the command is generate content. And based on the document ID and the authorization, you will trigger the text generation. The important thing is this document ID, to clear that up, is not the ID you have here. This ID is unique to you, but nobody is stopping me from creating another object with the ID 1 in another collection. So if you would, if you want to create a text for the object 1, you would have created 2 texts right now. So what do? When we create the data set, so when we upload that document, we get a specific document ID back. I'll show you in the editor. This was the answer from uploading the data set. When we uploaded the data set, we got this ID, and this ID is unique in our systems. You see this UID, that's what you have given, that's 1, and the ID is that what we give you back, and you have to save this UID, this ID in here, so that you can refer to the product or to the data set later when you try to modify it or to trigger a text generation with it. I'll show you how. Again, I can fill it out in here. I have to give the ID of the data set. I have to give the authentication token again. Okay, I can get the code. Okay, I'll go back in here. So to the results, you see it's still not generated, but I will put it in here. Now the operation is as follows. As you see, we go to the documents, the specific document I just uploaded, it's this one, and the command is generate content, and I want to create content with it. I give it the specific data that I need. Payload is none because we don't have to put up anything, but the command is a post because we want to create a text and save that on the service, and that's only doable with post. Now, when I run that script, a text should appear on the right. And here it is. The data was D. That's my text. That's the only text that can be created. And in the answer, we have a message here that the content generation was scheduled for which document that we can save and be done with it. Now that we have created the text, we just want to get it from our systems. We can do that in 2 ways. First, we can get the list of the complete collection. This one, list all documents of a collection. But for now, I want to show you to get a specific text, which I will do with this command: show details of a document. The details of a document contain the text. And again, I will need the document ID. It's the same ID I just used for triggering the text generation. It's this one again. I will put it here. I will put the ID token in here again. Okay. Get Python code. Again, I go for documents and the specific document, this time without an operation or without a command. But the command will be get, which tells me just give me all the information you have about this object, this document, and in there we will find the text and the data again and some metadata that we will look at later. We got the API to answer with the text data in here. Let's look at it. That's a bit of a bigger section. Again, we have the ID of the object we requested. We have the processing response, which means we have the text in here. We get a list of any errors that occurred. And here you can look if there were any errors. And if there were, I would suggest you to let a human look at it to see how severe the error was. If you can still publish the text, and if not, discard it and create it again or repair the training. You get a bit more meta information, but down below in here, you will get the content as a raw text. You will get it as HTML. You see, it's a paragraph. Each statement should be a paragraph, and you get the same thing with our tracking HTML, and you get it as a BB code. So in the API, you get 4 separate versions of the same output, and you can use whichever you like. You also get the data back if you want to use that, and like that, you get the text back you created. This would be the API call you would do if you would keep polling until the text is generated. But you can also configure a webhook where you would need to give us an address where we should send the text after it is created. This is documented in the documentation. We would have thought 2. For example, in the documents, webhook for receiving text, you will get a message from our system, which is like this. And how it's done, you can see in here. I won't do that right now because I would have to set up a web server to do that. But you can ask us anytime you need help with that. This saves you the time and the internet bandwidth to poll our systems for each text. You would just wait until we contact you with a generated text. Okay, this was one round trip of our API. Actually, we did the authentication, we uploaded data, we generated content, and we downloaded it. If you have any further questions, you can write us in our comment section or in our web chat. And I hope you learned something, and I hope I could teach you something about our APIs, and I hope I could help you. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. And bye-bye.